Our free live webinars give you direct access to our team of experts. They will answer all your questions about French property, currency, legal, financial planning, moving to France, and more. In this special webinar, Zoe Smith will put all your most frequently asked questions to our expert advisor from Elitax. So, if you've got questions on French taxes, tax returns, and wealth tax, this is your chance to put your questions to the experts.
Hello everybody, and welcome to the latest of our French Entree webinars. My name is Zoe Smith. I'm digital editor of French Entree, and I'm joined today by Eliane from Elitax for a special edition webinar, which is entirely devoted to French taxes. So if you're a French resident or a non-resident with property or business interest in France, and you have questions about French income tax, wealth tax, or filling in your French tax return, this webinar is for you. For those of you that aren't familiar with French Entree, we are part of the France Media Group, who are specialist publishers covering all aspects of French life and culture, from travel to gastronomy to buying property. French Entree itself has been a leading resource for French property buyers for 20 years now. In fact, 2023 is our 20th anniversary. And not only do we help buyers to find their dream property in France, we also help and advise with every aspect of the property buying and moving to France journey. Now, if you are looking to buy a property in France, you may also be interested in our French Property News magazine, which you can subscribe to over on the French Entree website. And you can also buy our full range of magazines, calendars, gift cards, and lots more at francemedia.shop. So let's jump into today's French tax and tax returns webinar. As I mentioned earlier, I'm joined today by Eliane from Elitax, who are bilingual tax experts based in Paris. Elitax specialize in income tax returns and wealth tax returns for expatriates and non-residents with assets in France. They cater for everyone from individuals and the self-employed to small businesses and multinational enterprises. So Eliane, if you'd like to turn your camera on now and come and join me. And I'd like to say a big thank you to you, Eliane, for taking part today in today's webinar. Here she is. Hello, Eliane.
Hello, Zoe. Thank you so much for welcoming me.
So we're aiming for a runtime of around 1 hour today, and I'm going to put as many of your most frequently asked questions on French taxes to Eliane. So a big thank you to all of you who sent your questions in advance. I have been through all of them, and I will be putting many of them to Eliane today. We're going to split this up into two main sections. The first section will be French tax for residents in France, and then we'll move on to French tax for non-residents and French property owners. And I'll also be putting some of your live questions that you have today to Eliane along the way. You can put your questions in the Q&A box on your screen at any time throughout. And if you're watching this on Facebook, you can leave a comment and one of my colleagues will pick that up. We'll also be conducting a couple of quick polls throughout just to make sure you're all still paying attention. And finally, if we don't get around to your question today, or if your question is too complicated to address in this webinar, please be sure that we have read them all and that we will make sure that we forward those questions to Elitax after the webinar. A quick disclaimer before we get started. This webinar is for general information purposes only. It's not intended to be a substitute for professional tax advice or professional advice regarding any aspect of your tax planning or tax liabilities in France. Now, if you do want the peace of mind of having an expert like Eliane handle your tax return or answer your specific tax questions, then please do get in touch with us at webinar@frenchontrade.com after the webinar, and we'll pass on your details to her. Well, that's more than enough for me. So without further ado, I'd like to ask Eliane to just introduce herself and tell us a little bit about Elitax and what services they provide.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Eliane Racotte-Noël. I am graduated from a French business school and an American school of law. I started my career in a French multinational, 86 salaried employees across the world at the International Taxation Department. That is how I became an international tax specialist. So I worked in that company 6 years and started my own company, Elitax, back in July 2000. So we help international HR, emerging resources managers to, to help their salaried employees that are living, that are coming to France or leaving France And we also have quite a large number of clients that are individuals that needs, help with their income tax returns or wealth tax returns in France. So this is what we do at Elitax, and we are always very happy to help people out with the French taxation, or sometimes can be a little bit complicated.
Yes, don't we know it? Well, thank you, Eliane. So we're going to jump straight into some questions for Eliane. And the first ones are all looking at tax for those of you who are resident in France. Now we're going to start with some of the basics, and then we'll get into some of the more nuanced questions afterwards. So firstly, let's start with an easy one, if there are any easy questions about French tax. Can you briefly explain the income tax liabilities for a French resident?
Okay. When someone is tax resident in France, that person must declare his or her worldwide income. Okay. So not only the income earned from French sources, but any income earned abroad. Of course, if there is a tax treaty signed between France and that country of origin of your income, there won't be any double taxation. Nonetheless, those income needs to be declared in France, and will have a little impact on your taxation in France. Not only you need to declare your worldwide income, but also your worldwide wealth, your worldwide, donations, inheritance, and so on. And that you also need to declare the bank accounts that you have opened abroad. If not, non-declaration of a bank account held abroad, it will lead to a fine, 1,500 euros. And you also need to declare all the life insurances that you have contracted out abroad. So that is what we call unlimited tax liabilities for the French tax residents.
Okay, so essentially, in a nutshell, you need to be declaring everything on your French tax return if you live in France.
Yes, yeah, interested in all.
Okay. What is the difference between French income tax and French social charges or social contributions? And will I need to pay both of these if I move to France?
Yes, okay. Income tax, taxes you pay on the income you earn. And social contributions, you are contributing to the French social contribution, system, because you are benefiting from that system. So social contributions are paid depending on which income you are earning. If you are earning a salary income, that is handled by the employer, who will withhold automatically those social contributions at source. But if you are an owner and you rent out a property, your leaseholder does not, withhold that. So when you are declaring your income tax, then not on your income, not only taxes will be calculated, but also social contributions at the rate of 17.2%.
Okay, yes, so that's something that people do need to be aware of if you're new to the French system, is that there are these two different taxation systems in it. Well, the social charges aren't taxes, but it's a contribution to the social security system. But they do make up quite a big percentage of what you might pay if you're working in France. So it is something to be aware of. Okay, let's move on to the next question. So does everybody who is resident in France need to file a tax return?
Yes. It is mandatory to file a tax return in France as a tax resident. Whether you earn income or not, you need to file a tax return in France. If you don't earn an income, then they will issue your tax assessment like a non-tax assessment, but at least you have a document that you can present to other organizations and so on. And also, if you are a foreigner and you want to renew your visa or your carte de séjour in France, you will be asked to prove that you are compliant with the taxes in France. So you need to file whether you have income or you don't have income if you are tax resident. I'll be glad.
Right. And yeah, I think that warrants repeating, because I've had a lot of people writing with various versions of this question. You know, when do I need to file a tax return? So we can say, as a blanket answer to that question, if you live in France, if you are resident in France full time, you must file a tax return, regardless of whether you actually need to pay taxes in France. You still need to file that form. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. But we can, I know we will come back to the non-resident in the second part, but just as a parallel, if you are non-resident, you don't need to file income tax in France if you don't earn income from French sources.
Okay.
So non-resident will declare only if they have income from French sources.
Okay, that makes sense. And so for somebody who is moving to France, what do they need to do to file this tax return? How can they get a tax number, for example?
Okay, for the first year, you know, for those arrived in 2022, for example, this will be the first time they will be filing income tax return. So they don't have a tax number. They are not known from the tax administration. So they need to go on the www.impot.gouv.fr and download the tax return form. So you can write it down quickly. It is the form 2042. You type it in and you will be able to download this form, and you will file a paper tax return for the first time.
Okay.
And then as of next year, you know, in 2024, then you will file online, because in the meantime, when you will file this year in May, you will receive your tax assessment in August. Then you will have a fiscal number. And from this fiscal number, and something we call revenue fiscal de référence, maybe we will have the opportunity to talk more about that. With those two, you can create an account on the impot.gouv.fr site.
Okay, so that clears that up. So yeah, so for somebody coming to France, they need to file it as a paper tax return, the first one. And then after they've filed that first tax return, they will then receive that fiscal number, the tax number, that they can then create their online account. And for the rest of us, does everybody file online now? I think that's the case.
As soon as you have filed once in France, the subsequent year you need to file mandatorily online.
Okay, right. So yeah, everybody is now on the online system. Okay, great. And what are the deadlines for filing your tax returns in France?
Okay, so for the first time filers, this year, 22nd of May is the deadline to file the income tax return. Midnight, Central European summertime, you to file the paper return. But for those who are already in the system, they have an extension, an online filing extension. So if you live in the department 01 to 19, you will have to declare on the 20. Oops, I had my paper. That will come very quickly on the 24th, on 25th of May.
Okay.
If you live in the department 20 to 90 to 59, then it will be the 1st of June, and for the department 59 to all others, the 8th of June is the deadline this year.
Yeah, so that's something I think that's important for people that aren't used to the system in France. It does depend where you live in France, the deadline.
Where you live, département, yes.
And we do, to help people out, I'll ask my colleague to just pop, we do have a calendar with all the 2023 tax dates. He'll pop that into the chat box for you now, so you can have a look at that. Okay, another thing that's a bit different in France. What is a fiscal household in France, and how does this affect tax?
Okay. In France, our taxation is based on the fiscal household compared to other countries where you have individual taxation. In France, we do have fiscal household taxation. What is a household? It's like a single person is a one tax household. A married couple, or some people who are taxed, meaning they have signed a civil contract, then those two, they form one fiscal household, and they will file a joint tax return mandatorily. okay, except the first year of marriage or the first year of, you know, signature of this civil contract. You have the option to file either jointly for the whole year or separately for the whole year, for that year when the event occurred. Okay, you make your calculations and you opt for the best one. Okay, you have the opportunity only once. After the following years, you will file jointly. So married couple or past couple with or without children, they will file jointly. If they have children, then we will add those children to the parents, and then all of these, they form the fiscal household.
Yeah, so that's something that's really different for people who are coming from the UK or US or most other countries, actually, I think. Yeah, mostly it's an individual tax return, whereas in France, yeah, it always goes, if you're married or paxed, then
it is mandatory to file jointly. Okay. It is not an option. It is an option only the year the event occurred.
Right. Okay. What do expats need to understand about tax reductions and credits in France?
Okay. Tax reductions and tax credits are expenses that are encouraged by the lawmaker. And they say that if you have this expense, we will grant you either tax reductions or tax credits. And this is by law, we don't choose, but depending on your expense, you will have a percentage of this expense as a tax reduction and credit. So what is the difference between both? Tax reduction is the, of course, it helps to reduce the income tax to pay, but it is limited to the amounts of tax you have to pay. For example, your income tax to pay is 5,000 euros, and you have total of tax reductions for 7,000 euros. You won't pay the 5,000 euros, but the 2,000 euros are lost, quote unquote. They won't pay you back that. But if your expenses grant you tax credit, and we take the same example, 5,000 income tax to pay and 7,000 tax credit, you don't pay the 5,000, but the 2,000 are reimbursed to you. So the credit are never lost, but reductions can be lost. So just some examples, when you give to charitable organizations, these are tax reductions. But if you hire someone like a cleaning lady at home, it is a tax credit. If you have your kids less than 6 years that are, you know, you take them to garderie and so on, those are also tax credits.
Okay, and so yeah, that's really interesting to understand the difference between them. And from what I understand, there's quite a lot of these sort of reductions in credits in France. What are some of the sort of things that people might get these reductions or these credits on? I know you mentioned hiring a cleaner, for example, and that's just at your home, is it? What other sort of things might you get these for?
A tax credit from if you when the double taxation is annulled, this is also a tax credit. You will never lose the difference, if ever. Mm-hmm. If you invest in France, like in cinema, forest, and so on, those are all tax reductions. Other tax credits are, as I said, children care.
Yeah, child care.
You know, 40. We have total 40 of those.
Wow. Okay. So that's definitely something to kind of do a little bit of research on and be aware of, because I think a lot of us don't realize we're entitled to them. Okay, let's move on. What do
tax credit if you make some improvement in your main residence, that is all to save energy, you know, that also grants you, you know, you change your windows, and you know, and it is better for the, you know, the temperature and so on. Those are also tax credits.
And we'll come back to that actually when we talk about property, because I know I have had a few questions about that, about ones for renovations. Okay, what do retirees need to know about declaring their pensions in France? Will they need to pay taxes and social charges in France on their pensions?
Yes, depending on the job occupied before they get retired and receive pensions. If someone, for example, is tax resident in France but worked in the UK for a private company, according to the tax treaty signed between France and UK, this income is taxable in France because it is a private pension. Whereby if that person was working as a civil servant paid by the UK government, this income will remain taxable in the UK. Nonetheless, that person will declare this income as retirement pensions already taxed in the UK. And France will deal with this income and annul the double taxation according to what is agreed in the tax treaty signed between France and the UK. So private taxable in France is a public pension taxable in the country of where that person has worked before.
Okay, and so if there is a double tax treaty in place between France and the country that somebody's coming from, and they're receiving a pension from that country, sorry. I've forgotten my question now, sorry. We'll come back to it. I think it's in one of the questions to be sent in.
I can say, yeah, I can complete that. In any case, this income will be declarable in France, whether it is taxable abroad or not. You know, that person needs to try to.
Yes, that was my question actually. So it is declarable in France, and would that be a tax credit that they would then give you against if you've already paid those taxes in the UK or in the US or somewhere else?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Right, we got there in the end. Okay, do I need to declare my foreign bank accounts in France, and how do I do this?
Yes, absolutely. As when I was explaining the liabilities of a tax resident, you need to declare all the bank accounts abroad, you know, savings account, current account, you know, investments accounts, cryptocurrencies accounts. All of them, you need to declare them. And you need to declare them on the form number 3916. Again, for the first-time filers, you go on the website, on the government website, impo.gov.fr, and you just type in 3916 and you download this form. On this form, they are not asking you how much you have, you know, on those accounts. What was the amount the 1st January and the 31st? No, it is really to know, you declare as you, the owner, your address, name, date, and place of birth, and so on. The nature of the account, if it is a saving account, you know, or a current account, the name of the financial institution of the bank, the address of the bank, and the bank account, and the date, the opening date of the account. Sometimes we forget, you know, because it has been opened by, you know, our grandfather when we were kids and so on. We don't remember, but try to write something. If it is empty, where they ask you to put the date, then you will have a question. When there is something there, you know, they won't spend their time and to go and check if this is the actual date, you know, but the year, the month, and if you don't know the day, you just put something. They don't like empty boxes.
That's a good tip, actually, for filling in the tax return in general.
But if you can get the exact information from your bank, then go for it. But if it is it is the deadline tomorrow or today, I don't have the time, but I need to feel that I don't have the time to ask my bank. Then you try to find the year. Sometimes, you know, which is when we turn age at 18 that we open our first bank account. So we have roughly an idea of the year, the month, and we put. Don't leave a box empty.
Okay, and with regards to this declaring these foreign accounts, you mentioned cryptocurrency accounts and insurance policies and things like that, life insurance policies. What about credit cards? And what about things like a PayPal account or a currency account? Is that something you need to declare?
No, it was a question some years ago, but it's clear that a PayPal account should not be declared unless the total of the transactions during a fiscal year is more than 50,000 euros, then you will have to declare this PayPal account. If not, it is, it is not an account, you just take an amount from your bank account, put on the PayPal, and it goes to pay what you are ordering online or so on, or paying online. So that is okay. You don't need to declare that. And also those cards, those credit cards, if they are linked to an account, so you have already declared the account, so everything is okay. So,
yeah, I guess that's the specific thing. If it's actually an account, then you do need to declare it. So a PayPal account, for example, will always be linked to a bank account somewhere that you would have declared.
Absolutely.
So, okay, that makes sense. Okay. Oh, and one other thing on this topic of declaring foreign bank accounts, because I've had a few people write in saying that they haven't declared this in the past because they didn't realize they had to, and now they're going to declare, but they're a bit worried because they haven't declared it in the past, and are they going to get fined for that?
Yes.
What would your advice be on that?
My advice will always be to regularize a situation. Because I can understand this fear, saying that, oh, now when I will declare it, then I will get fined for the previous year. So you don't do it. So each year you are adding up, and raising your risk. So always, each time you have a situation that is not correct, my advice and what I will do with all my clients is to go and regularize. When you go, and you say, I knew not, I know that, law ignorance is no excuse, and so on and so forth, but please, I'm a foreigner, and so on. They, since you are coming spontaneously, they are more, understanding. But when they have discovered, then you will pay the fine. So always, so what I will give, like a takeaway from today, what I do for my clients is that I will declare the account and say that this declaration for this year 2022 is also, for the year 2021. Please, I would like to regularize my situation by declaring this year, because you remember I already told you that you will write the opening date. If the opening date is 2018 and you are declaring 2022, they have the information, unless you go and start, lying and put something else. So we won't go there, So, you declare and say you knew not and you want to regularize, and you write, on the form 2042, page 2, on the bottom, you have a information zone, which is where anything you want to communicate to the tax authorities, you have that also online. The information, and your renseignement complémentaire, and then this is where you will write these little notes that, you will see attached my 3916 form, for this year, but the account was already open for last year also. Please, I would like to regularize my situation. And when I do that for my clients, as fingers, they have never been fined. But always with more than almost 30 years experience with the tax authorities, always go and regularize the situation. Because if they come after you, then you don't have any mean to say, please, sorry, because they are on their full right, and they will go after you. And I have seen them fining people with this 1,500 multiplied by 3 bank account, multiplied for 4 years. That's it. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's excellent advice just across the board with anything to do with French taxes. Like, if you have made a genuine mistake and you realize it does happen to the best of us, even when, if you're trying really hard to follow the rules, it can happen. It's a very complicated system, but they do seem to be much more lenient.
Yes. Write this nice little thing in this information zone. It is important.
Okay, great. Okay, let's move on to foreign income. How do I declare foreign income in France?
Okay. As we said,
somebody who is resident in France,
yes,
of course, but earning in
France, you need to declare your worldwide income. To declare your foreign income, you will need the form 2047. So again, on the government website, you go and you download the form 2047. It is a pink one.
Sorry to interrupt, but if you're doing this online, are these forms already in you can just bring up another page?
Yes, Yes, if you have already declared a
Yeah.
foreign income the previous year, it will automatically come here for you.
Okay.
But if
That
it is
makes sense.
your last year, you only earned a French income, and this year it's new that you have a foreign income, you receive interest or dividend for the first time, then you will have at the beginning when you start filing online to tick, you know, the boxes, you know, that I have a foreign income, and
Yeah.
then it will populate a 204 form for you to fill in.
Okay, great.
But if you forget to do it at the beginning, you can still, you know, when you finish, instead of signing, you come back at the beginning and you ask for, you know, for them to download, to put, you know, to show the 2047 form for you.
Okay. Okay, great. Right. How is the revenu fiscal de référence calculated on your French avis d'imposition? Is this your net earnings? Or is it a bit more complicated than that?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Depending, for example, let's say you earn salary income in France, okay? You earn a gross income minus 20% social contributions, okay? Then you are taxable on your net income, okay? From this net income, they will deduct automatically 10% for professional fees, because to go to work, I need to buy suit, I need to buy makeup, and so on and so forth. So we are taxed in France on 90% of our net salary. Okay, you have gross, you deduct social contribution, net salary, minus 10%, we are taxed on the 90%. So let's say that my next taxable income is 90,000 euros, okay? But in the meantime, I have had some expenses that I can deduct from my taxable income. For example, if you voluntarily contribute to a retirement fund, a private retirement fund, this amount is deductible from your taxable income. My taxable income is 90,000 euros. I have invested 5,000 euros. So my taxable income here will be only 94 euros. Or if I pay alimony to my minor children or ex-husband, for example, this also is deductible. So your taxable income at the end of the day will be lower than your gross taxable income. Okay, so the revenu fiscal de référence will take into account all your expenses, you know, to find out your revenu fiscal de référence. So in my example, you know, and my taxable income is 90, my gross taxable income is 90,000 euros, and I have deducted what I have contributed for my private pension and alimonies, okay, and I find that I have been taxed only on 70,000 euros. So my revenu fiscal de référence will be 90, and my revenu taxable will be only 70. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So the revenu fiscal de référence will be maybe higher than your taxable income, because they are not taking, they really want to, the revenu fiscal de référence is really your buying power.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is the number, for example, if you go to get a mortgage or rent a property or anything, that's the number that they take as proof of your earnings.
That is why it is the number that they take into account, because it is your buying power. This year I have invested in my pension, but next year I may not. So, you know, so the figure that is important here is the revenu fiscal de référence, which is your gross taxable income before any deductions.
And as we're on this subject, another question that's come into my mind is with regards to social contributions, although we're mostly talking about income tax returns here, with social contributions, are you paying the tax on your earnings after you've already had the social contributions deducted from your earnings, or are they part of the taxes that you're paying? Does that make sense?
Okay, if you are a salaried employee, it's taken care of by the employer. We don't talk about it.
Yeah.
But if you earn, for example, rental income, okay, you have your gross income from which you deduct all your expenses, and then we have your net taxable income. This is what will be taxed, and this is also the basis to calculate your social contributions, 17.2%.
Okay, okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
Okay, right. How does the, switching subjects a little bit here, how does the auto entrepreneur or micro entrepreneur system, which is the same thing, it's just a different name, work for taxes? And is this a good option for small businesses?
Yes, it is a good option because it is quick, it's fast, it's easy. You go on yourself.fr website, and if you manage well, by the end of the day, you are, registered somewhere, and you can start, your activity legally. And then from when you are registering, they will ask you if you want to opt for what they call prélèvement libératoire. You will pay your social contributions there and prélèvement libératoire, which is 2%. Okay, at the beginning.
Like a flat
yes,
rate.
it is a flat rate. A flat rate, 2%. But after the year, so you will be paying those 2% as long as you earn money and you declare them, you pay those 2%. And the year N+1, you will declare your income. You will declare, no. Sorry. The cleaning lady.
Oh.
So you will declare your actual income received, and if this income is above your taxable income is above 27,000 euros, then they will recalculate your income tax as normal and deduct those 2% that you have already paid. But if your income is below that, okay, and even your taxation rate may be, your average taxation be maybe something like 7% or 8%, they won't recalculate. They say the 2% you paid is okay, is sufficient. Okay. But if your income is above a certain threshold, they will calculate your income tax as normal and deduct those 2% prélèvement libératoire that you have paid throughout the year.
Okay, so you'll always end up paying the higher amount of tax, I suppose. if
you earn, quite a
yeah, if you go over the threshold. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Right. We're going to just take a quick little break. I'm going to pop the first of our polls up on the screen quickly. Let me just find it. Here we go. Should be able to see that one now. Right. So what best describes your situation? There's 4 options here. So either I'm an expat living in France and I pay my taxes in France. I'm a non-resident, but I own a property or business assets in France. I'm looking to move to or retire to France in the future, or another situation. And if you do have other, pop your situation in the chat box so that we can see. And I'll just give you a few more seconds to answer that. You seem to be doing that very quickly. It looks quite even at the moment, actually, quite an even split between all 3 of those main options. So quite a lot of you that are living in France and paying your taxes in France, quite a few of you who are also non-resident but own property or business assets in France, and quite a few also looking to move and retire to France in the future. So hopefully today's webinar will be useful for all of you. And we are going to move on in a minute to looking at non-resident tax issues. I'm going to see if I can get through some of these live questions quite quickly, because I know we're already running out of time. Right, let's end that poll now. We'll put those results for you up on the screen. So yeah, it's pretty much an even split, 27%, 33%, and 26%. So a good mix there. Right, I will stop sharing that and we'll get back to some questions. I'm just going to have a quick look at a few of the questions that people have sent in. Okay, as a French resident, how do I declare UK rental income on my French tax return? The tax should already have been paid on this in the UK.
Okay, absolutely. So you will on the form 2047, you will declare this income as rental income. This income will be taxed in France, but they will grant you a tax credit. So it means that at the page 4 of this form 2047, you will go in there are 3 sections there, meaning is your income according to the tax treaty exempt in France, but taking into account to find your taxation rate in France, or does this income grant you a tax credit? Okay, then you will put it not only on the first page, the income you receive from abroad, but you will also go on the fourth page to claim this tax return, this tax credit. Okay, never forget to do that. If not, if you put it only on the page 1 of the 2047, great, you have declared your income from abroad as you are supposed to. It means that they will tax, but you also need to claim for the tax credit page 4 of this form. If not, the one dealing with your tax assessment may, since they saw that you on page 4, page 1, you have written that this income from UK, they know that normally that person should have a tax credit, but they don't have the right to correct your tax. Can you imagine if they give the possibility to any tax inspector to correct your tax returns? Yeah. It will be a mess. So that person can notice that you can have a tax credit. If they are nice, they will write you a mail saying that it seems that your tax return is not complete. You have not asked for the tax credit, or they may just calculate. And if you don't realize, you will be paying twice because you have not filled in correctly your tax return.
That's really important to remember, that you actually have to ask for the tax credit.
You have to ask. You have to declare it, page 1, to ask for the tax credit, page 4.
Okay, and so quite a few people have been asking about a system where they're working for a UK company and living in France, and they're being taxed in France. In England on that. So that would be the same form, right?
That is not correct.
Oh, okay.
If you are living in France, working for a UK-based company, the taxation should occur in France, because the tax treaty between France and UK is very clear on that one, or US also. That's if it is a salaried employee, a salaried activity, for example, is always taxable the place where the work is performed. Taxation has nothing to do with where the employer is based or where the salary is paid. It has to do with where the work is performed. So that people can go and live in another country and they have the right to work. And we have discovered many people working on the French ground, especially since the pandemic, and they come and they live here and they work in France and continue paying in the UK. This is tax fraud, and the tax authorities, they know that you are living on the French ground, and they will come after you 2 or 3 years after. We know that if you have not declared an income in France, or you declare late, I have given you the deadlines. If you file late, it is 10% fine.
Okay.
But if they come after you, it is 40% fine, plus 0.2% per month as interest on arrears. So be careful, those working in France for a UK employer, and the employer continue, withholding the income tax and pay to HMRC. This is not correct. And moreover, when you are working in France for a UK-based company, that should be declared to the tax authorities. The company should be registered in France as a foreign company employing someone working in France. Because
firstly, I think that will be a surprise to quite a few people who have written in with these questions, and it's very important that we brought that up today. But I was going to say, would a better option for somebody who wanted to work for a UK company but live in France. For example, that's something I do myself, but I've set up as an auto-entrepreneur in France. So I've registered myself as a business or freelancer in France. And then I invoice that company who then just pay me as a freelancer. Would that be a situation that, because that's obviously a legal way around it, would that be something that might be an option for people like that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Yes, it means that you are no more the employee, salaried employee. You are in France and you are registered and you are working. But caution, if this client was your former employer in the UK, that is forbidden. That is what they call a salariat déguisé. You see, these guys, it's
yes, I've heard of
entrepreneur. You set up your company and you go and find clients, normally more than one. Normally when you have only one client as an entrepreneur, they can contest.
That's true, actually. Yeah, I forgot about that. So actually, for somebody who was only working for that one client, which again, in my situation isn't the case, as I work freelance for multiple different
okay, that's okay.
But yeah, that's true. Obviously,
if you have one client and that client was your former employer, that won't work. They will come after you and they will come after the employer. And this is illegal working, hiring some person in France. So this is very important. We have regularized situations like that for people because, when they come after you, it is, the fines are very, very high for that person and also for the company abroad.
Yeah. Okay. Well, for those that did write in with questions on those grounds, it could be a good idea to book a consultation with Eliane and actually talk through this situation, because obviously that's you don't want to be continuing down that road. Okay, right. Let's go on to some of the, I'm aware that we're running out of time quickly. So let's move on to some of the questions for non-residents now. So these are people who aren't living in France, aren't tax resident in France, but perhaps own property in France or have other reasons why they might need to pay French taxes. So first question is, how do I know if I'm tax resident or not in France? Okay.
To know if you are tax resident or not in France, you need to look at, the tax law, Article 4B. Sometimes, you cannot escape the law. Okay. So three criteria here. First one is, do you live in France? You, your spouse, and minor children. Do you live in France? The answer is pretty straightforward, yes or no. If it is no, okay. The second criterion is, do you work in France? Okay. If the answer is no. And the third one is France your center of economic interest? Meaning, is France the country from which you are earning the maximum part of your income? If the answers to those three questions are no, then you are non-tax resident in France. Okay. Do you live in France? But if you don't live in France, but you come in France, you go back and forth, and you are in France more than 183 days, if you are living split over 2 countries, then also if the answer is yes, then you may be tax resident. But if clearly the answer is do you live in France, your spouse and your minor children? No. Do you live in France more? Are you presently, physically present in France more than 180 days? The answer is no. Do you work in France? The answer is no. Is France your center of economic interest? The answer is no. Then you are a non-tax resident for sure.
Okay. So I will also get my colleague to just pop, we have an article on which explains all the rules of tax residency, and she'll pop that in the chat box for you now, because that is actually quite a complicated subject for some people, but we do tend to go with the 183-day rule as such for people who have second homes in France. We always encourage people never to spend more than that amount of time in France without at least consulting a tax expert first to make sure that you're not. So assuming that for most French property owners, they are resident in another country, not in France, but they're probably coming in and out of France and they own property in France. Under what circumstances might they need to file a tax return in France?
If the property is generating income.
Okay.
If the property is not generating income, you just will have to pay the taxe foncière and taxe d'habitation in some circumstances. That's it. It is income tax. If you don't have an income, you don't have to file an income tax return. But if you do, then you file a tax return. And if you rent it out, your property empty or furnished, you are earning two different kind of income. Okay. If it is empty, you have what we call a revenu foncier, and if it is furnished, it is revenu bénéfice industriel et commercial. So those are two different kind of incomes to do at two different forms to file. Okay. And for those renting out furnished, it may be interesting to opt for what you call loueur en meublé non professionnel. That is very tax efficient, whereby the property will be like depreciated each year, and you will have this amount like an expense, which is not an expense, but that will reduce drastically your income, your taxable income, therefore the income tax to pay.
Okay, so that's good actually for anybody who is renting out their French property or letting it as a holiday home in some capacity as well, and you're receiving an income for that. You will need to pay those taxes in France, and you will need to file a tax return for that.
Yes.
But most other people won't need to. The one thing where you might need to pay it, which was my next question, is what is a French wealth tax and who is liable for this?
Okay, you pay the French, now we call it property wealth tax. In the past, until 2000, now, yes, right? until 2019, it was wealth tax, whereby it was your properties, real estate properties, shares, cash, jewelry, car, everything was taxable. As of 2019, it was a change with La Loi Macron 2. Then only your properties are taken into account. And if the net value of those property is above the threshold 1,300,000 euros, then you will have to file this impôt sur la fortune immobilière. Okay, but you have to, and I say the net value. So if you have a mortgage, the value of your house is 1,500,000, but you still have 500,000 as mortgage. You won't be paying that, because the net value is below the threshold. It is really the net value, what you have paid off, what it is. If it is more than 1,300,000 euros, then you will have to file a property wealth tax return simultaneously with the income tax return if you do earn income. If you do not earn income, it is the same form, the 2042 that I mentioned earlier, and you just have to fill in the wealth tax return section if you don't have income. But if you have both income and you need to pay also the property wealth tax, then you file both on the same form.
Okay, and does this only apply to properties in France, or does it apply to properties all over the world? Okay,
if you are tax resident in France, it will be your worldwide properties that will be counted in this threshold. But if you are non-tax resident, it will be only the property is located in France that will be taken into account. And for those who arrived, lately in France, for the first 5 years of residence, the properties abroad are exempt.
Okay.
For the first year that you have tax residency in France, all the property based abroad are not taken into account in this threshold. But after 5 years of tax residency in France, they will be added up to your French ones or not, or taken into account to find out if you have reached this threshold.
Okay. Okay, great. That clears that up a little bit. Right. Let me just get my questions back up. What is the new Déclaration d'occupation for French property owners? So this is the new property declaration that people need to file this year. Who needs to fill this in? And does it mean that property owners now need to file a French tax return as well in France?
Yes, it is not a tax return declaration. It is a separate form. It is another story. You know, you need to, if you, as long as you own a property, you have to file this declaration d'occupation. Meaning how many properties you have, who is occupying, do you have a tenant, or is it for your own usage, and so on and so forth. It has nothing to do with the income tax return. You may file both, you know, you declare this, and then the income you receive from the leaseholder will go on your income tax return. So this is, and you have until the 30th of June to file this new, it is new, it started this year, and you have from the 1st of January this year to the 30th of June to file this Déclaration d'occupation. If you file it after, then you will be fined 150 euros. So it's better to do it, you know. But it is easy. It is quite straightforward. You know, it is a questionnaire to fill in, and that's all.
Okay, and we've had quite a few questions about this, particularly from second homeowners, about what they should fill in on this form. As a second homeowner, what people are asking me is whether or not they fill in the occupancy. So they've ticked that it's for a second home, but then do they fill in the occupancy as the whole of the year 2023, or do they have to fill in every week that they intend to spend in the property during that period? Or
the most important, the one who will be occupying. What they are trying to do with that is to avoid, you know, having those empty, you know, empty properties in the cities where there is tension, you know, where the local people, they can no more buy properties because, you know, it is a nice place by the seaside, and the investor, they buy everything, but for 10 months in the year, it is all closed, you know, and people, they use it only for vacation and so on. So there is already a tax in France, is a tax sur le logement vacant, meaning that, you know,
if the property is vacant,
you know, so I think that they want, they have not told us everything concerning why they're asking that, but if I read between the lines, is that they would like to augment the basis of those who need to pay these non-occupant occupancy taxes.
So with that in mind, I'm assuming if you're a second homeowner, you would be occupying the property as a second home for that period, or you'd be occupying the property as a rental, you know, a tenant, or you'd be occupying the property as a permanent resident, etc. Or you declare the property as completely vacant if no one was using it at all, and then it will, in theory, affect your taxe d'habitation, how much you would pay if you are liable to pay.
We have written a little communication on that one. So if someone is interested, we can send that to them. And
okay, well, if anyone wants to get hold of that, just send us an email at webinar@frenchentrees.com and we'll get that sent over to you. We are running out of time. I'm going to try and squeeze in one or two quick questions. Let me see the ones that people have sent in. There was one that I wanted to ask. Just going to see if I can find it, because quite a few people have asked this. Let me find it. Second homes. Here we go. Okay, so I've had quite a few people write in with similar questions, and essentially they are telling me that these are people who are saying that they have a carte de séjour for France, which is a residency card for France, However, they don't live in France, and they are in fact tax resident in another country, for example, the UK or the US, where they pay their taxes. And they're property owners in France. So I'm assuming that they've applied for this carte de séjour in order to be able to enjoy their second home with no restrictions on traveling. Now that the new property tax declarations have been released, they're worried that they're going to get into trouble if they declare their home as a permanent residence, as they should be filing a French tax return. On the other hand, if they declare it as a second home, then they're worried that they will lose their carte de séjour.
Yes.
I think I know what you might say on this, but what would
Yes.
your advice be to somebody in this situation?
Yes, yes. The carte de séjour for someone living abroad, having a carte de séjour is not normal, you know. Of course, it is easier, so you don't have to ask for a visa or to do it. It is easier for you to travel into France and to stay as long as you want. But it means carte de séjour, meaning that you are sojourning in France. It is your place of living. You cannot have the carte de séjour and not be tax resident. So now, you know, all those things, you know, are put into place just to find out if everybody is conducting him or himself properly. Of course, if you declare it as as a second home occupancy, that is another story, because even the taxe d'habitation is not the same amount if it is your second home or if it is the first home, your main residency. So, of course, this will be uncomfortable for those people who have the carte de séjour but are not living in France. If you have a carte de séjour, normally you are a tax resident in France. That is why they have issued you this card. I understand why some people have it, but you know, now with all those things, you know, they are trying to, you know, to cross-check everything and to be sure that everybody is playing, you know, about the rules, you know.
Yeah, and this is something that did also come up in our visa and residency webinar that we did a little while ago. And we had the same response that, yes, if you are applying for carte de séjour, then you are declaring that you are a resident in France with all the legal requirements that go along with that, including paying taxes and filing a tax return.
Filing a tax return on worldwide income when you have already, you see?
Yeah, it's a complicated thing. So yeah, I think the advice would be to anybody who is in that situation is to rectify that and you know, make a decision on where you are living and where you are going to reside and pay your taxes and follow the rules according to both countries. Otherwise, you could be getting yourself into more trouble than it's worth.
Yes, absolutely. So I have just a question here that I want to pick up, you know. Someone talking about, I have a dual nationality with England and US. How can I figure out how many tax you have to pay? Paying tax in France has nothing to do with your nationality, you know. Okay. You know, you may have three nationalities and so on. Income tax is, you know, you have an income. Is it taxable or not? Is it taxable as a resident or a non-resident? That has nothing to do with your nationality. A tax resident in France, regardless of his or her nationality, must declare the worldwide income. So really, no question of nationality with the taxation, you know. If not,
okay, yeah, that's a really good one to point out. I think people do get very confused with that, and tax residency is a different thing to your nationality or what passports you hold. So yeah, it's a good one to bring up. Right, well, we're going to have to wrap things up, and we've had so many questions that we can't get through, so we'll have to try and get Eliane back again for another one of these. But yeah, thank you so much to all of you who attended, and a massive thank you to Eliane for today. If we didn't get around to your question today, we will make sure that we forward them on to Eliane. And if you do have any additional questions or you want to get in touch with Elitax, you can also email us at webinar@FrenchEntrée.com. If you enjoyed today's webinar, keep an eye out for more French Entree webinars over the coming months. We have upcoming webinars that will be focusing on visas and moving to France, on real estate and investments for Americans in France, and also on retiring to France, amongst many other topics. And we'll be announcing details of those soon. You can sign up for our weekly newsletter over on the French Entree website to make sure that you stay up to date. And don't forget to subscribe to our French Entree YouTube channel as well, so that you can watch the replay of today's webinar. And finally, do let us know what you thought of today's webinar and what topics you would like to see us cover in upcoming webinars. You can drop us an email at webinar@frenchentree.com. Thank you once again to everyone for attending. Thank you one more time to Eliane.
Thank you, Zoe.
Thank you. And hopefully we'll see you all on the next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.